In video games and cinema, Latin America is often portrayed as a dangerous place where either drug cartels are fighting or revolution are constantly happening. The developers of Despelote don't deny there's some truth to this. When they wanted to record sounds in a park, they had to hire a bodyguard or their equipment could have been stolen. But instead of creating fear and focusing exclusively on bad things, the game's creator focused on the good. This is a partly autobiographical story about simple childhood joys and how even in tough times there are moments that make life brighter and bring people together. We are transported to Ecuador on the early 2000s, especially to its capital, Quito. At this point, the country had already survived a severe economic crisis that devalued the national currency and left millions of citizens without access to their savings. In 2000, the currency finally died and was replaced by the US dollar, which helped the economy but didn't solve the problems of poverty and unemployment. On top of that, President turned out to be the worse and worse. The atmosphere in the country was pretty grim. But then a miracle happened. Ecuador's team had their first real change to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. The national team, long considered one of the weakest in Latin America, was showing decent results and defeating favorites, which couldn't help but inspire Ecuador's residents. This sport began becoming part of the daily life even for those who had been distant from it, and the developers of Despelote, who obviously lived in the Quito at this time, tried to recreate the atmosphere of 2001 based on their own memories. We play as a Julian, a boy whose story allowed Despelote creators to tell about their own childhood. Whose story is too grand a word, it's more like fragments from life, infused with the developers' personal experiences and war moments from growing up in Quito. It's particularly interesting. The city was recreated based on real photograph, a three-dimensional version of the small neighborhood where the protagonist lives, but everything has a grainy filter applied. Only rare environment elements, including some people, stand out against everything else, depicted in white with thick black outlines. This makes what's happening actually feel like memories, when you remember location fully overall, but important objects are forever etched in memory. For example, Julian's room looks like a big grainy blob, but the Transformer toy and football team poster exist separately from everything else. Or the street, shops and storefronts are particularly indistinguishable, but the author clearly didn't forget the large window behind which several TV stood showing football matches. The main character is in love with football. He tried to spend every 3 minutes playing with the ball. Class ended at the school right after the bell rings. He rushed with the guys to the playground, and after that he decided to sneak away with them through a secret passage to keep playing. His mother sees him on the bench and asks him not to go anywhere for the next hour. Of course, it's better to spend that hour on football. Just need to return on time. The character has a wristwatch, and the game repeatedly set deadlines. Be at such and such place at such and such time. As I understood it, you can ignore this request since it doesn't affect the story, but I try to always do everything on time. Judging by the character's remarks, the efforts didn't go unnoticed. This plot doesn't really have a plot as such. We are told which team Ecuador's national team faced in qualifying matches and what the main character was doing during these matches. The gameplay is very simple. We walk around location from the first-person perspective, sometimes interact with objects, sometimes communicate with people. For example, wave at them. There's a separate button for this. So we don't always get a friendly reaction. Periodically there's an opportunity to play football, either with this guy or alone. Finding our abandoned ball in the bushes. In some scenes, instead of ball, you have to use other objects like bottles. Here they even made a simple football simulator. On the boys' ancient console they played Tiny Soccer, a fiction game where we control a little figures from a top-down view and participate in matches. And when we get a ball on the city streets, we can either just kick it around or take a powerful shot. The controls aren't entirely convenient, science, camera rotation and kicking use the same trick. But there's a charm in this clumsiness. It's a street football after all. Despite the modest graphics, you believe in this version of Twitter. This place evokes nostalgia for a city you never been and never you could visit. Compared to the stereotypical Latin America shown in games like Just Cause and Ghost Recon Wildlands, everything here is much more romanticized. But you need to understand that everything is shown at true lens of childhood perception. Voice-over commentary from the developers provide context, talking about the country's political situation and revealing the reason for the character's concern, but doesn't delve into some more serious topics. They didn't worry the authors much in Chillhole, so they don't worry the main character either. For him, football and his team victories in a championship that once seems an unattainable goal for his country are much more important. The sound design adds a depth too. The soundtrack consists of Latin America's motifs, and all characters speak Spanish. They are well voice acted. When your mother grabs you by the shoulder and scolds you for a mistake, shouting in Spanish, you can seamlessly hear irritation and care in her voice. And background sounds like a dog barking and a ball bouncing on asphalt bring the Swiss and park to the life. However, there is still a lack of gameplay mechanics. There's a feeling that is some episodes the player is forced to kick the ball around for long periods, not for narrative purposes, but to stretch out the playthrough a bit. These moments don't irritate or bore, but some of them still seem not entirely necessary. On the other hand, without them, the game would be even shorter. You reach the end in 2 hours, and there's no bonus modes or collectible items. I suspect that Despelote would only be interesting to football fans. In reality, it's completely different. Knowing the history of Ecuador in the early 2000s, you understand the reason excitement about national team victories, and you don't need to understand the sport here. It's not a simulator after all. This is an interactive journey through a developer's hazy memories that turns out very atmospheric, kind and heartfelt. It's seamlessly a segue to understanding what the country went through in those years, and life affirming when there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even if a dusty street becomes a place where a simple joys overshadow trouble. To sum up all of this, prose is a kind story is understandable even to those far from football, interesting visual style that makes what's happening actually feel like memories, amusing football minigame, and excellent voice acting. And cons is a clumsy ball playing controls, a couple of drawn-out moments, and short duration. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe.